So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Jeff. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Rick. Um, uh, Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you for sharing your time, valued time today with myself and JVC. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on right now in terms of promotions. Now through the end of March, the NX5 and the NX9 are promotionally priced at AllNet. The other thing is the NX7 does have a free lamp promo, and I want to make sure that you understand the free lamp promo is to the end user. All the end user does is go onto jvc.com, go to the projector page. You'll see it down there. It says free lamp promo. That will take them to the ProCision lamp promo form. They fill that out. They send the UPC code in from the box. And then JVC will be happy to provide them with a $600 value PKL 2618 UG lamp. That's the lamp that is in the projector. And this is something you should use as a closing tool for your customers as well. But that is nothing that is done through distribution and or you, the integrator. That's done strictly through JVC. On that. So NX5s and NX9s, we have a promotion that we're extending to our distributors right now to have them more promotionally priced. So they are very attractively priced at that point. And again, the NX7 is something that you can get a free lamp with for the customer. And again, this is a customer thing. You don't have anything to do with it. I want to talk to you about what models are available, and these models are available from all our distributors and folks that are on the call, from Custom Plus to Volutone, MRI, and of course AllNet. We have 4 projectors in DILA, direct drive image light amplifier projectors. These are LCOS-based platform projectors, the NX5, NX7, NX9, and also the RS4500. And we also have 4 DLP models, 2 models, the LX-UH1 in black and white, and also the LX-NZ3 in black and white. And the NZ3 is what we'll be talking a little bit about today. But this is our newest projector that we introduced at CEDIA 2019, and we demoed that in a multi-purpose room environment, if you will. There was a lot of lights. We used a Screen Innovations Slate S 1.2 gain screen. That was a slate screen, and that worked out quite well. Because projection does not necessarily have to be for home theater. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But again, these models are available through distribution, and these are all the projectors that JVC has to offer in terms of that. Now, the LX-UH1 starts out our line at $2,500. This is our second generation 0.47-inch tilt, pitch, and roll digital micromirror technology. From Texas Instruments. That chipset is going to be a native 1920 by 1080. That tilt, pitch, and roll is pixel shifting, so it effectively gives you 3840 by 2160, and you can represent this to your customer as a 4K projector. Because DLP can be each pixel could be individually addressed at any one point in time. That is why it can be called a 4K projector, even though its native is 1920 by 1080. This is not unique to JVC. This is unique to DLP and LCOS-based platforms, as well as LCD-based platforms and projection. They have to be native 4K or 3840 by 2160 resolution on the chipset in order to be called 4K. This is our entry-level piece. That's a 2,000 lumen projector. And this does have a one HDMI input that is full 4K, 60 frames per second, 18 gigabits per second, as well as 444 chroma sampling. So that's what's necessary to give you 4K UHD HDR content and the other HDMI input on this is a full HD 1920 by 1080 input. At this price point, it's rather unique too. It does have horizontal and vertical lens shift. It's always best with a projector of this type to try to get the projector the lens as centered as possible on the screen because you want to use your vertical lens shift to do the offset. Any horizontal you subtract from the vertical, any vertical you subtract from the horizontal offset. So again, with projection, it's always best to try to have it as the lens centered in the screen. Now, I say lens centered because if you notice on these projectors, the lens is offset to the left. And so you want to make sure the lens is in the center of the screen if at all possible. Again, this will give you the most vertical shift. Both available in black and white, and this product has been carried over from last year. However, I do want to make note that this is using the current DLP chip. So this is a different chip that was used in the first one. There is very little edge border on this, as well as we've also changed the HDMI 1 input chipset to be a little bit more robust than what was in the past. This chipset and that HDMI input is also what's on the LX NZ3 right here. Now, this projector fills a lot of needs that exist out in the marketplace. Many people, and I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, many people, but there's a lot of users out there that want to and need to have a larger screen presence in a multi-purpose room, a room that has lights and so forth. With 3,000 lumens, you're going to be assured that you get the best possible result from a multi-purpose room lighting environment. Also, the fact that this could be used as a primary projector because it offers laser light illumination. Now, that fluorescent laser light source, JVC pioneered the fluorescent laser phosphor several years ago or many years ago, I should say, over 7 years ago in our flight simulator projectors. And the reason that laser was used in those is because they're on 24/7. Now, with a primary system in a home, such as a multi-purpose room environment, you're going to have that projector on a lot. This will give you 20,000 hours of lifespan on the laser as compared to our DILA projector lamps, which will give you anywhere from 3,500 to 4,500 hours of lamp life on our DILA product. So this is going to give you 20,000 hours of illumination. Because it's also laser, this has an infinity to 1 spec because the laser can be turned off without having the product turned off. This will give you infinite black and then to white, so you have that. We upgrade this projector to include auto tone mapping, which I'm going to talk very extensively about today. Tone mapping in general and what the importance of this is, because JVC is unique in projection and how, 1, we do tone mapping, 2, that we have auto tone mapping, and 3, that our DILA products have a feature called Frame Adapt HDR, which is dynamic tone mapping. And this is very important for HDR 10 sources. And we'll get into that in a little bit. As I said before, the 2nd generation DLP chip that is on here. So the trickle down on this, the NZ3 came out, we redid the LXUH1 and put the same chipset in that one as we do in this one. JVC projectors all use all glass lenses, every single one of them, whether it's DLP or DILA. The lens throw on this is 1.6 to 1.36 to 2.18. Basically, what that means is this: if you take the horizontal width, and this is how you figure out what the lens throw is going to be, the farthest distance or the closest distance, or you can use a lens calculator. but you just take 1.36 times the screen width, not the diagonal, but the screen width, multiply that, and that's your shortest throw. And your maximum throw is going to be 2.18, and you multiply that by the screen width, and that will give you your maximum distance the projector can be away from the screen. This is a little bit larger projector than the LXUH1. It's a little wider than the other projector. Again, this is a $3,700 retail for the LXUH or the LXNZ3. We've been doing quite well with this thus far since its introduction in October, and it's selling quite well for many applications, whether it's a larger screen or it's someone that wants to be able to use it in a multi-purpose room because of the 3,000 lumen output that it offers. The nice thing about having a higher lumen output on this projector, and this is forte, is because if it's higher lumen output and it can go into higher ambient light rooms, contrast does not become quite the issue, because as the room has more brightness, contrast will be decreased. So again, this one is for sheer brightness, and it does have a fair amount of contrast, but again, if there's lights on in the room, this is a great solution. If there's minimal lights on the room and there's more light control, JVC has other solutions like our DILA product, which will give you far better contrast, but it won't have the light output. So again, different strokes, different folks, different needs, different pots to cook that secret sauce up in. So LXNZ3. Our more traditional product, JVC pioneered LCOS systems many years ago. The DLA NX5 continues to do well. That's a $59.95 map value. JVC just recently reduced for the month of January, February, and March. We're reducing the price of that and offering special values to our distributors to make sure that you can sell that for $5,500 and still remain whole on your margin. So that's a great thing. This does have auto tone mapping, as the LXNZ3 has. That was a trickle down from the DILA product on the LXNZ3. Auto tone mapping, again, is something that's going to be very important when displaying HDR content. With all our DILA products, they use full spec, full speed, 18 gigabit per second chipsets on both HDMI inputs. And of course, the DILA product also is ISF C3 certified with corresponding software. And also the DILA product all has control for SDDP protocol on the NX5, NX7, and NX9, as well as the RS4500. So the 7 is going to go up from a 40,000 to 1 to 80,000 to 1 native contrast ratio. It goes from 1,800 lumens to 1,900 lumen on this. This offers a much wider color gamut. So the NX5 had a 100% Rec 709 and about a 94% DCI-P3 color gamut. This will give you 100% Rec 709, over 100% DCI-P3, and about 74% of BT 2020 color gamut on a projector. That is outstanding specifications. So higher lumens, higher contrast, double the contrast. This goes out at a $9,000 price point. This has been something that is been a true performer for JVC since its introduction at CEDIA 2018. We really got going though late last summer on these pieces. So this is something that the NX7 is actually JVC's best-selling projector. It's at $9,000, and this is the one that also has the user lamp promotion on it as well. So NX7 at $9,000 is twice the contrast, higher lumens, as well as wider color gamut. The NX9 is the world's first 8K E-shift projector, meaning that we take our 3840 by 2160, or actually 4096 by 2160 resolution native on the chipsets on here. And then we also will quadruple that. We go from 8.8 million pixels to over 32 million pixels with our 8K shift, and that's going to allow the pixel shifting to take place. This goes up to 2200 lumen output, as well as 100,000 to 1 native contrast ratio. It has a massive 100 millimeter diameter all glass lens, the same lens that is in our flagship $25,000 RS 4500, which we'll talk about in a minute. This is also THX 4K display certified. It is the only projector that is THX 4K certified, and it was the first THX 4K certified display, whether it was projector or a panel. So this is a true workhorse at $18,000. This would be for someone that has a larger screen, say 160-inch plus size screen, that wants to take full advantage of the higher resolution that it has to offer. And then the RS 4500 is our 3000 lumen laser light source. Again, different light source. This is using DILA versus DLP. This uses a lot more laser diodes than the LX-NZ3 has. There's 48 laser diodes in this piece, and there's I believe there's 24 laser diodes in the LX-NZ3. This also is going to assure that you have auto tone mapping on it as well. But the NX5, 7, and 9 have Frame Adapt HDR, which we'll talk about here in a moment. For reference, the DLA NX9 will be chosen as the top pick of the year in Sound and Vision magazine. Top pick meaning not just for projectors, but top pick in terms of all products in Sound and Vision's February-March issue that's coming out on the newsstands, I think, later this week. This was the top pick of the staff at Sound and Vision. And this is a most highly read magazine in the consumer electronics industry for hobbyists as well as end users that are looking for the best in home theater performance. So the NX9 top pick this year, and JVC has had the top pick projector for the past 3 years, but this is top pick overall of all the products. So this is a big award for JVC on the NX9. The NX7 is Projector Central's editor's choice for all the projectors that they actually reviewed during the course of the year. The NX7 is one that won that award. That was just recently in January as well. And also the LX-NZ3 was just reviewed by ProjectorReviews.com. And the interesting thing about this review is the LX-NZ3 basically says that, look, it's a fantastic projector. It's not a DILA. It's not an LCOS projector. It's meant to be for a multi-purpose room. It's meant to be on larger screens. But the bottom line is this is a very well written review. Speaks very highly of this projector. And the important thing here to note too is the gentleman that wrote it, Phil Jones, was the chief trainer for Sony for many, many, many years. Phil knows projectors inside and out. He knows all the goods and the bads and the uglies. And Phil is also somebody that tells it like it is. And so I'm very pleased with this review based on who wrote it and the reputation that he has as well. Now, on the NX9, Chris Deering wrote that review. Chris is probably one of the preeminent reviewers in the industry for projection, as well as also the expert in the playback of HDR content and how to do that properly. Chris consults on a lot of JVC projects as well. And then Rob Sabin, who was also was at Sound and Vision as the editor-in-chief for many years, now is editor-in-chief for Projector Central. And Rob knows projection quite well too. And the NX7 was projector of the year for them. But the reality is that projection is not the only choice out there, and JVC has many different things that we can talk about and extol the virtues of. But the reality is Sony is not my competition. Epson's not my competition. BenQ is not my competition. LG isn't my competition. My competition is flat panel in general. Now, flat panel, as the sizes increase and the product continues to go down in price, the one thing we're not at is size. Projection continues to be the best value proposition when it comes to size of the panel or screen and projection combination per inch. And one of the biggest things is that you'll never hear ever a customer or you say, geez, I really wish I had a smaller screen. No one's ever going to say that. They're going to say, boy, I wish I had a larger screen. No one puts a large screen in and says, boy, I really wish I put a smaller screen in. The reality is that people and integrators, designers, don't consider some of the possibilities. In order to get twice as much screen surface on a 16:9 panel than a 75-inch TV, what do you think that you have to go? Do you think you have to go to 150 inches? Well, the reality is you only need to go to 170 inches to get twice as much screen surface on a projection screen than you do on a 75-inch panel. And by the way, you're not going to get a 107-inch screen for under $5,000. You can put the LXNZ3 at $3,700 with a good size screen, 107 inches or above, and get that under the $5,000 price point. And this is a big thing. The other thing is that knowing how to promote projection is important. Knowing how to add on to the sale is important. Knowing the fact that if you do use a 2.35:1 screen versus 16:9 and you're watching a lot of theatrical releases versus TV, you're going to get over 75% more picture if you use lens memory that's on the DLI NX5, 7, 9, and RS1 and the RS40 500 as you would a 16:9 screen using lens memory. So if the constant vertical height is the same on a 16:9 screen and a 2.35:1 screen, you'll get 75% more image on that 2.35:1 screen, either using lens memory or anamorphic lens. So that's something that is important to know as well. And the other thing too is when you sell projection, you're not just selling your ability to throw it on a wall and a mount. You're talking about getting a mount, a down pole, a screen, hanging that screen, setting that projector up, making sure that you have some longer runs in terms of balance or extenders or fiber cables, and we'll talk about that briefly too. All these things are value adds for you as an integrator to increase the average price of that sale, while at the same time delivering on the promise that people want to be entertained visually, and the only way they can be entertained visually is being immersed in a high quality image, and projectors are the only thing that's going to immerse your clients in that without spending hundreds or tens of thousands of dollars on a panel, of much larger panels. So that's there. I want to talk about a little bit about some of the terms that are used in projection and how they are similar, as well as so you understand some basic terminologies. Lumens are going to be, lumens are usually applied to how bright something is, and in this case, JVC uses lumens and the industry uses lumens to measure projectors. ANSI lumens can be also heard, but very few people other than calibrators are using ANSI lumens. And the difference is the brightness across 9 different points versus 1 point when you dive to lumens. Nits is another term for brightness. Now, nits, though, are applied to HDR10 content. How bright that content is, what it was produced at. Was it a 1,000 nit title? Was it a 10,000 nit title? How bright that is, and that's measured in nits. Foot Lamberts are usually applies to how many foot Lamberts is the screen or this image on the screen after it's been projected. Foot candles rarely is used anymore, but the lumens, nits, and lamberts are all very much part of the vernacular for projection systems. And I also want to point out that what you need for SDR, standard dynamic range content, in terms of foot lamberts, which we recommend about an average of 16 foot lamberts for a calibrated picture, for home use is fine. But when your home theater use for HDR, that should be around 40 to 50 foot lamberts. Now, thank goodness that there's a lot of different places you can figure out the nit level based on a calculator. Projector.com has that, as well as there's a there's an app for Android and Apple called Video Calc. I think that's a $5 application, and that will allow you to put all the numbers in, lens ratios, throw ratios, screen sizes, aspect ratio, and those things, and then allow you to get the foot lamberts that way calculated on the screen size and also the projection distance. Those are some of the things that you can do. But again, 40 to 50 foot lamberts is necessary for HDR content. And this is where it's important to also consider using the right kind of screen, that screen being some ambient light rejecting screens in many cases, or screens that also have a modicum gain to them. 1.2, 1.3 gain will also help with HDR content. Contrast ratios, JVC both delivers natively as well as dynamically. Dynamic contrast is always going to be a higher number than native, simply because when you measure native contrast, you measure the center of the screen 100% white and at 0% black. A dynamic contrast measures the absolute darkest black and the brightest white, even if each is measured with the iris or aperture open or closed. So that's why it's a much a wider range. ANSI contrast isn't used as much anymore, but contrast ratios is where JVC shines. Color is the one thing that people all can see. Color is the one thing that makes our worlds difficult when it comes right down to it. That's why you have to make sure that you have the right connectivity, selecting the right either fiber HDMI connection, the correct balun or extender. There are many different brands out there that do this, but the keys that will ensure that you have success, and don't call me or don't call somebody else about how it doesn't work, is making sure that you have the following specs on every cable and HDMI input in your entire path. It must say 4K 60p. It must say, in addition to 4K 60p, it must say 18 gigabits per second, and it also must say 4:4:4:4:4 on there. That is 4:4:4 chroma sampling. That is going to ensure that you get the best connectivity, and without it, you won't get it, and it's all because of color. Think of it this way: SDR content uses 8-bit RGB, which is 256 colors or 16.7 million color combinations. HDR will give you 10-bit color with 1,024 combinations with over 1 billion colors. This is very important to understand. It's not the resolution that limits the ability for connectivity. It's the amount of color that's trying to be delivered, and that is why your connections, your cables, your extenders have to be of that spec: 4K 60p 18 gigabit 4:4:4 chroma sampling. If you have it, it'll work. Color gamut, SDR color is Rec 709. That's the small triangle inside on the image there, the one with the dotted, the hyphenated lines. So as you go to DCI-P3 color space, it increases dramatically. On DCI-P3 is where all HDR content is delivered at DCI-P3 in a BT 2020 color packet. Now BT 2020 is massively much more color, And if you'll notice there, the wider the color gamut, the more colors are there, and just demonstrated in the previous slide. So color gamut is super important there, and JVC projectors will deliver that. Now the LXUH1, the LXNZ3, and the NX5 projectors will all deliver 100% of Rec 709. The NX5 will deliver 90% of BT 2020, and the NX79 and RS4500 will deliver up to 100% DCI, over 100% DCI-P3 color, and up to 70% or over 70% of BT 2020. So as you go up in price, it's the color processing that you're paying for, as well as some of the other features. Now, gamma and gamma correction is very important for HDR content, and that's important. This is one of the settings that makes the image quality either really good or, in many cases, really bad, because the gamma has been set up incorrectly. And the bottom line is, you shouldn't have to worry about setting the gamma up. The projector should do it correctly for you, and I'll show you how JVC does that in a minute. If you'll notice here on this slide, it shows you examples of 100 nits, 600 nits, and let's see here. I think because of my menu, the way I've got it, I've got 1,000 nit brightness. Now, that is an example of what the gamma curve has to do. If you notice, they're all set up differently based on the nit level. Now remember, nit level is the amount of brightness that the content was reproduced at. If it is not correcting the gamma and perceptual quantization curve, or PQ curve, the projector is going to deliver a poor quality image. And this is why I keep saying projector, is because projectors are not capable of delivering 1,000 nit brightness. All right, they're not capable of delivering 4,000 nit brightness. They're not capable of delivering 10,000 nit brightness. Most projectors at the best projectors are capable of delivering about a 400 to 500 nit level, and that's why HDR gamma curves and the ability for the projector to automatically do this for you is super important. And JVC projectors, they have auto tone mapping or Frame Adapt HDR is going to ensure that that happens. So HDR10 standards, if it says HDR, it's HDR10. Hybrid log gamma is rarely used, but it is a broadcast standard. HDR10 plus. Now HDR10 plus, there are a few titles out there that use HDR10 plus, and there's even more that are Dolby Vision. The reality is there's no HDR10 plus or Dolby Vision available on any commercial projector or a consumer projector, because they require HDMI 2.1 in order to have that work. Now, JVC's Frame Adapt HDR circumnavigates that, because while HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision allow dynamic tone mapping, HDR10 Plus allows you to do it scene by scene, but Dolby Vision allows you to do frame by frame tone mapping, and JVC's Frame Adapt HDR, which I'm getting to, is going to allow you to do both. So whether it's HDR10 plus, whether it's Dolby Vision, whether it's hybrid log gamma, or just HDR10, JVC has solutions that are going to ensure that that content is played back perfectly, automatically, every single time. This little section here I've included is because I chose one. I chose Apple TV today. But one of the things that you have no chance of getting a great picture out of Apple TV if you don't set it up properly. And this is one of the things that is going to assure that if you do what I'm asking you to do with this simple setup, you're assured that the JVC projector and any panel that you have plugged into it is going to work perfectly every time, and not give you too dark of a picture, too bright of a picture, too red of a picture, too green of a picture, too anything. But you have to give yourself a head start. You have to set it up correctly. So the bottom line is this: if you go to the settings mode, a menu in the Apple 4K TV. All you have to do is make sure that you enable, you choose the format 4K SDR. Now, why SDR? That is saying that if it is based on what it will output at if there is no HDR, right? 4K SDR doesn't mean it's always going to deliver 4K SDR. It's going to ensure that you get 4K SDR when it's 4K SDR content. You don't want 4K HDR to be delivered when it's not HDR content. So as 4K SDR, have the HDMI output set to YCCB CR, or that'd be also synonymous YUV. This is the whitest color chroma that you can get. The chroma set it to 444. This is going to ensure that you get the best color output. And then this is the critical thing here is you want to match content for both dynamic range and frame rate based on what it actually is produced at and what it was sent to the content provider as. If you do not match the dynamic, if you do not match dynamic range and you do not match the frame rate, everything will be output at 4K SDR. If in the format section, that's where you set, or if you set it to 4K HDR, it would be always output at HDR. So if you do exactly what I'm saying here, enable HDR, choose the format to 4K SDR, HDMI output to YCB CBR or CR, Chroma 444, and match the content, you're assured that that Apple 4K TV user is going to get the very best picture quality experience each and every time. And the fact of the matter is, it'll save you a lot of headaches too, because this is one way you can test all your connections from your video source, in this case, the Apple 4K TV, because if the cables aren't right, it's going to tell you they're not right. And then you can make the right adjustments because the cables wouldn't be 4K 60p, 18 gigabit 444 cables. Now, auto tone mapping. Auto tone mapping is the ability for a JVC projector, be it the LX NZ3 or the RS4500, to automatically tone map to HDR content based on the content source. Now, what's important here is this. Metadata is going to be output from the source. That metadata is the max CLL and max FALL. Based on the metadata of the source, the projector is going to set itself up to maximize the picture quality of that content. Here's an example. From Apple 4K TV, the max CLL of a piece of content may be 1493 nits. The average frame may be 541 nits. What the projector sets itself up to do is +1 on the picture tone, 0 on the dark level, and +1 on the bright level. Well, that's fine, but if the content changes, which it does, by changing the channel, by changing the source, all these are going to change based on the content. Same Apple 4K TV, we go from iTunes to Netflix. Now Netflix, this source is 4,000 nits. It was the previous at 1,493. The average frame was 1,000 nits. The previous source was 541 nits, but the picture tone had to be changed. The bright level had to be changed to accommodate that nit level on this source, on net, or this piece of content from Netflix. Change again, the source is Apple 4K TV, but the provider now becomes YouTube. This content is down to 250 nits, the brightest net level on that content, and the average is 100. Notice the picture tone is +6, 0, and +6. The projector is making these changes. No consumer, no integrator, no calibrator is going to change what is necessary to play back that HDR content every time you change a channel or change a source. The projector has to do that. Now, this is based on the content, all right, based on the metadata that's being provided from the source material. Real world, let's take an example, what a picture looks like, and these are just image captures. This was done from the Meg. And the Meg is a torture chest, both to watch, because it's a terrible movie, and the fact that it's also a torture test for any projector and or panel, for that matter, to properly tone map that image. Now, this is what the image look like on a JVC projector using auto tone mapping. What I want you to concentrate on is that big white spot in the middle of the screen. That big white spot in the middle of the screen is a diver coming down through the water underneath a ship that's that big black or dark area there. And you can see that diver in a dive bell, all right? The max CLL in this particular scene is 4,000 nits. We take that same scene, use a different projector from a different manufacturer, and notice what happens to the picture quality because it doesn't use auto tone mapping. It's blown out, there's banding, and you can't tell anything that's in that image from this image here, auto tone mapping, another manufacturer without auto tone mapping, banding, and so forth. Now, if you take that same manufacturer and actually tone map it, it can look very nice, but somebody had to do something in order to do it. JVC looks this way all the time, every time, because it's automatic. Other manufacturers, you have to manually change that information. Now at CD this year, we added a new feature called Frame Adapt HDR. This actually takes the auto tone mapping feature up a huge notch, because now not only does it does it tone map to the title, it dynamically tone maps to the scene and or frame. So as the title is a stagnant metadata, in dynamic tone mapping like HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision offer, but I told you you can't get that unless you have an HDMI 2.1 input, and no one has one of those yet. JVC circumnavigated the need for HDMI 2.1 and also the fact that we can deliver that performance to frame adapt HDR to scene or frame dynamically, scene by scene or frame by frame dynamically tone map the scene. So as an example here, scene 1 is a very dark image. If you don't have frame adapt HDR in that scene, it's going to be very dark. Scene 2 is very bright. It's going to be overblown. And on the bottom, you see it done correctly. Scene 3 is a combination of dark and light scenes, and it's projected equally as well. So the bottom line is Frame Adapt is going to ensure that you get the best picture every single time you want to play an image. And Frame Adapt HDR is on every JVC NX5, NX7, and NX9 projector. And this is a huge feature. This is a firmware update that can be applied to any JVC NX5, 7, or 9 that can be got through jvc.com, through our support page, through downloads. It's done through a USB jump drive, and you plug the jump drive into the back of the projector. It takes about 20 minutes once the files are loaded on the jump drive to download and to update that projector. It's also important to note that when you purchase an NX5, 7, or 9, make sure that the firmware on it, when you get it out there, says 3.01. If it is not 3.01, and believe me, 99% of the units out there are not 3.01 yet, you need to firmware update those to get Frame Adapt HDR. It'll have auto tone mapping on it, regardless. But Frame Adapt HDR is going to give you superior picture quality. Now, if you'll note here, this is 2 examples that I took at CEDIA of HDR10 auto tone mapping and Frame Adapt HDR that is on the image on the right. If you'll notice, and I hope you can see my cursor, if you look at this area here, this area without Frame Adapt is very blown out. It's very, very white. Notice the detail that's on this image. And again, we're taking screenshots from my iPhone to a computer I'm asking you to see a difference. But notice the difference here. There's a big difference between this area and this area with Frame Adapt on, Frame Adapt off. This area down here, this very, very dark area that has less definition, this is going to give you far more definition. Also look at the surface of the water. The surface of the water on the same exact image, it looks like it's rippling and it's got waves on it, where this is a little bit smoother because the contrast is actually correct. So there's a lot of areas that this will help. Now, there are 4 different ways to use Frame Adapt HDR, how much intensity or how much processing you want to use. There's the auto mode, there's a low, medium, and high mode. So depending upon either the size of your screen and or the brightness or nit level of your content, you may want to adjust that accordingly. But at the same time, auto works pretty good. In this case, it was set in the auto mode. What it says there in that menu system, it says HDR 10 on the left, it says Frame Adapt HDR on the right. The lamp mode is in high output. The aperture or the iris is in manual iris control. In other words, we're not using it to auto adjust based on the scene. But Frame Adapt HDR measures the HDR video content in real time. It adjusts the HDR picture settings dynamically, either scene by scene or frame by frame. And these are HDR 10 features, HDR 10 plus features, scene by scene, frame by frame, or Dolby Vision features. And again, we can do this on JVC projectors today without using HDMI 2.1 inputs. And the result is a much better picture, both in highlight shadows and with optimal color saturation at any level of brightness. And again, I want to stress automatically. Your customers, you deserve the very best in picture quality. And this is one way that JVC is assuring that you get that, that picture quality. So this is pretty much wraps up what I have to say for the day. And if there's any questions at all, I would be more than happy to address those questions at this time. So in retrospect, we've got a lid for every pot out there in terms of projection. Our price points are anywhere from $2,500 down up to $24,000. We have laser both at the $2,700 or $3,700 price point and the $25,000 price point. Both are 3,000 lumens. But what we do have with 5 of the 6 different projectors that we offer, we have either auto tone mapping on 2 of those projectors, and then the other 3 we have Frame Adapt HDR, and this is significant to JVC, and only JVC allows you to do this automatically. So what questions we have? Rick?
All right. So one of the questions, can you pop back to the slide that talks about HDR setup with the Apple TV?
Sure.
Okay. And then the question that came up is, are there any specific recommendations to other common devices like the Roku or the Comcast Xfinity boxes, DirecTV, or are there any other device-specific setup recommendations?
The reality is these, while this was specific to Apple, and the fact that I don't own any of those other devices is one of those reasons I didn't do it. Number one. Number two, though, this is not just indicative of Apple. So in other words, if your Roku has the option of outputting 4K 60p Dolby, all right, which the Apple does. It also has 4K 60p HDR. It also has 4K 60p SDR. The point here is with this is you want the Roku, your DirecTV, your Dish Network, your Amazon Fire to output the native resolution and dynamic range of the source. What you don't want it to do is upconvert to something that the source is not. And this is why that in this slide it says match content. You want to match the dynamic range and the frame rate. You don't want it to go up to 60 frames per second, as Apple TV will do with everything if you don't have matched the frame rate. The frame rate of almost every single movie you watch on Apple TV is 24 frames per second. But if you don't have the frame rate set to match content, it will output it at 60p. If you don't have the dynamic range set to match content, it will try to give you more dynamic range than what was there and update it or upgrade it, if you will, to HDR if you don't have it set to 4K SDR. Most movies that you get, unless it says 4K HD, so here's the thing. This is one of the caveats. In Apple TV 4K speak, Dolby or 4K Dolby Vision means it's 4K HDR10 or Dolby Vision. All right. If it says 4K UHD on Apple TV, it's not HDR. So don't watch it in HDR. Watch it in SDR. The color will be right. It won't be too dark. It won't be too black. It'll be right. So again, some devices want to give you maximum frame rate and HDR all the time, when in reality, you only want to watch the stuff that was reduced in higher frame rates and HDR or Dolby Vision with the content that is actually produced that way. Don't make it something that's not, because it can never be right. I hope that answers the question, but it doesn't specific to
Sure.
Roku or Fire or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, and the concept of 24 frames versus 30 frames, some of us old schoolers remember that from working with Gordon at Faruja, who JVC worked with as well. I remember the JVC dealer projector that was that had the Faruja front end, and they talked about 3-2 pull down for that exact reason. How to get it to match to be effectively displayed on video. Well, anywho, okay, so the next question that pops up, Bill's asking, which models have motorized zoom and focus?
All the DILA models have motorized zoom, focus, and lens shift. The DLP product is manual. The DILA is motorized. The DILA product also will allow you to do lens shifting, which will allow you to have 16:9, 235, 240, 239, 235 aspect ratios. The DLP product will only allow 16:9 aspect ratios, period. So in a nutshell, NX5, NX7, NX9, and RS4500 all have motorized focus, zoom, and shift, also have lens memory. The DLP models, the LXUH1 and the LXNZ3, do not have any kind of lens memory, and they are mechanical zoom and shift and focus.
Okay, so Alan's asking a question, and I don't know that I understand it. I'm going to ask it to the best that I understand it. He's asking about the advantages of the DLP versus a pixel shift style projector.
Okay,
so and I'm assuming he's going back maybe to the older
nope,
DILA.
I think I can answer that the way you just read it from him. First of all, I want to make something very clear. The DLP models are pixel shifting products. The resolution of the native chip is 1920 by 1080. It is not 4K. Of the LXUH1 and also the LXNZ3 DLP models. The native resolution of the chip is 1920 by 1080. Okay? But because the way the CEA has allowed DLP to be specified there is, here, go back here. The feature TPR, or tilt, pitch, and roll, is nothing more than pixel shifting, okay? But because, so on this first line, it says TRP, tilt, roll, and pitch, digital micromirror device. The resolution on the screen is 3840 by 2160, but make no mistake about it, it's 1920 by 1080 on the chip. But because each of those 8.8 million pixels are actually individually addressed, in other words, you can see each one of those pixels on the screen if you took a photograph of it a nanosecond in time, okay? On LCOS, DILA, SXRD, Sony, LED, LCD panels, if they're not native, if you took a picture, you would only get the 1920 by 1080 image on a camera, right? So LXUH1 and LXNZ3 are 4K projection. You sell it as 4K. It's specified as 4K, but only because it's DLP. It does pixel shift.
Okay. Is there a 4K UHD micromirror, or is that everyone is doing the same thing, correct? All the other vendors
Yes,
that
sir.
have. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, that's what I thought. All right,
So
and because the way that
it's not unique to JVC. This is the way it is for DLP.
okay, and Texas Instruments and the CEA have that's
Yes,
the
it's
classification that has
marriage.
been perfect. Okay, all right, cool. Let me see what else. Jeff asks, he says he's had issues with Apple TV and the NZ3, so he's hoping that the settings that you showed will resolve his issue at a client's residence. Perfect.
I'm sure.
Jeff
I'm
also
sure
asks,
it will. And if it's
he
not,
also
then
asks if
give
we
us a
can get a
call.
copy of the slideshow.
The slideshow will be available. I mean, there won't be. I won't send a copy of the slideshow, but you can get a copy of you can watch it on YouTube.
Okay. And if Jeff, if you have a specific, if you want to see like the screenshot of the settings or something like that, just let us know, and we can.
I can listen. I'll be
that.
more than happy to. My email is jmarks@us.jvckenwood.com, and email me. And I'll be happy to send you the screen. I'll be happy to send you the complete little brochure we made for that Apple 4K TV settings. That's not a problem at all. And my phone number is 630-258-5509. Put it out there for people to use.
Nice. Okay. All right. I think that's it. Oh, Jeff said, yeah, once it's posted on YouTube, I will post it to you. I'll send it to you, Jeff. Okay. And I think we have answered all the questions that have been posed so far. If anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to
Contact
put them in here. Aaron asks for your email and your phone again. Jeff, do you want to just go back to your first slide?
Yep.
Okay, there you go. Aaron, 630-258-5509. All right. Oh, I've got a quick question that I always ask of everyone when we got them on. So as far as resources go for calculating throw distance, is Projector Central accurate with your product?
Projector Central is absolutely. Also, if they go to JVC, if they go to jvc.com, go to the JVC lens calculator, that will give you, it'll give you the right information too, believe it or not.
That's always important. Okay.
And also, like I said, Projector Video Calc is another really good one, but that is a application you put on your Android or Apple. I think it's $5 for the app, but it is very helpful if you're installing, multiple projection systems a month. That's invaluable as well, and that's usually pretty good. The one thing I want to, and I'll wrap this up real quick, the one thing I want everybody to understand is never, ever, ever take what any calculator, including JVC's, as gospel. Do not put it at its zero tolerance level. In other words, if it says it'll run at 15.2 inches away from the screen, don't put it at 15.2 inches from the screen. Give yourself about a 5 plus or minus 5% on the plus on the or farther away on the short throw and close 5% closer on the maximum throw. Never, ever, ever with any calculator ever take that as gospel, because it's not. So it gives you the right, gets you in the right church, but it doesn't give you the right pew.
Yeah, we say the same thing, like never go within the first 5% or the last 5% of a calculated throw.
Right.
Okay, perfect. All right, and then Bill is asking a follow-up question about calibration discs or software or hardware that you recommend for calibration on these products.
Spears and Munsell just came out with a new one. It's fantastic. And Scott Wilkinson is going to be, he's finishing up a article on how to use that that disc basically a tutorial. But Spears and Munsell they are the gods of calibration discs, and you can purchase that online from them.
Okay, yeah, I'll look into that as well. All right, Bob's asking follow-up questions about specific screen brand and type for the JVC. I think in the beginning of this you mentioned an SI, pairing with an SI product at a specific showing. He's asking if there are any specific models that are recommended. We're not offering any sort of ultra short throw in this lineup, are we? So
no,
we don't
JVC,
need to worry about like the
JVC
super
is not
bizarro.
offering ultra short throw, and we continue to look at that. We continue to explore our dealer base, our distributor base, our end user base, and the bottom line is that ultra short throw, while it solves a lot of problems for a lot of, especially a lot of urban installations in buildings where people are transient, where there isn't an ability to run cable, Smurf, anything like that. Ultra short throw is a great solution. The only problem with ultra short throw is, in order to do it the right way, you have to have the proper screen, and it needs to be a lenticular short throw screen. And the screen prices start around $4,000 retail for a lenticular screen. The other thing is that if you think setting a projector up is a nightmare by itself, try setting a short throw up, because your short throw, you have to do 9 different points versus 3. And you do a lot of bending, like pixel shifting. It'd be equivalent to keystoning and pin cushioning, which distorts the picture. So there are reasons the short throw is good. The best one I will say is the LG HUS 85. Really enjoy that little piece. Optima also makes a really nice piece, but they are what they are. And the other thing is that the gain on a lenticular screen is a negative gain. So while these projectors are 2200, 2000 lumens, a negative gain actually gives you less brightness. So therefore, you're not getting what you think you're getting. You're getting less brightness in an environment you want to have more brightness in. So there's a lot of greats, and there's a lot of bads about short throw projection, as long as you know what they are. And for put it in the right job for the right reason, and what the expectation is, you will never get the contrast that you can get out of an LCOS-based projector. Selfishly JVC, not so selfishly Sony. But again, the reality is they are solution-based projection systems and not performance-based projection systems.
Okay.
Screens, though, screens in a nutshell is this: use a white screen for dedicated home theater, complete light control. Multi-purpose rooms use an ambient light rejecting screen, always, and also consider some amount of gain on both. JVC's preferences in terms of when we do shows and we can get any screens we want. We use matte white screens with a 1.3 gain for our HDR content for dedicated theater rooms, and we also use ambient light rejection screens for multi-purpose rooms, and again 1.2 to 1.4 gain. You're not going to sacrifice too much or too little when you go with a little bit of that gain. It's going to help HDR performance. If you're only watching SDR, which I don't think anybody watches just as SDR, 1.1 gain is fine. But again, those days are gone where if you're going to benefit from having a tiny bit of gain. Because there are so many different screen manufacturers, I will tell you that JVC's preferences are Stewart and SI, but in the Dragonfly screen has its benefits, as does Daylight, as does the various different manufacturers that build screens and also are sold through the 4 distributors that are on this call today.
All right, Bob posted a follow-up. He said, is there any sort of code or menu setting that you could recommend to have the projector match certain screen types? And I'm guessing like ALRs or high contrast gray or something like that versus going through a complete dialed in calibration.
So thanks for bringing that question up. JVC has a screen. We have a setting in our DILA projectors, right? In our DILA projectors, that will allow you to have up to almost 200 screens now. On our website, there is a list of screens in the screen for the build. As an example, if you had a slate 1.2 gain screen from SI, you would pop in the number 114 as an example, and that would give you the amount of offset or color offset that the screen is going to add. So let's say every screen has a certain amount of a red, green, or yellow push or blue push. We know what they are, we've measured them, and then therefore we have our projectors accommodate for that. So that's something there that's on every one of our DILA projectors. That's in the setup menu.
Okay, perfect.
The DLP product does not offer that feature.
All right. And Bob asks, where is the menu option?
It's in the setup. It's in setup under. You turn the screen. What's it called? Screen. No, I forget. It's if you ask me in 5 minutes, I'll tell you exactly where it's at, because I'll remember. Screen setup mode, and then that you turn it on, and then it asks you for a 3-digit code. That 3-digit code corresponds to a PDF that we have on our website that will allow that to be done.
All right, perfect. All right, I don't see any additional questions. So thank you for your time today. Bob, I'll send you a link to the archive once we post it. Should be give us like 5-7 days. And I'll have that posted up on the YouTube channel and I'll send it off to you. Okay, if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to either shoot them to my email or send them to Jeff via either email or phone, and we'll get you some answers and get you the links if anyone wants a copy of the link. We've got some interesting trainings already booked for this year, so I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us on this one today, and keep your eyes and ears open. We're going to have some interesting training announcements coming soon. So Jeff, thank you for your time today, and thank you everyone for joining us on the call.
My pleasure, and thanks everybody for attending.